Good morning. My name is Jonathan Neef, campus pastor at Christ Church Vernon Hills. Thanks for letting me record videos with you this morning and be with you this morning for a morning devotional. I'm pulling this devotional, just a personal application from chapters 4 and 5 of our sermon series, which we are preaching on. To get the full picture and the full scope, please listen to the sermons, watch the sermons, and go online to our website to get those. These are just something personal that I've been taking away. So we're in chapter 4 and 5. I want to kind of compare the two kings. The first is King Nebuchadnezzar. The next is maybe a son or grandson of Belshazzar. And both of these men were asking a question that I've asked myself constantly, maybe subconsciously, but it's, do I measure up? Am I enough? Do I measure up? Have I done enough? Am I working hard enough? Do I need to do more? I don't know if those are voices in your head, but those are constantly in mine. In fact, I told my wife the other night, I said, every night when I go to bed, I just feel like I'm always thinking to myself, well, I'm not sure I did enough today. Well, here's two men who I think were asking maybe a similar question. And Nebuchadnezzar, the greatest king in the known world at this point, and he looks up at one of the ancient wonders of the ancient world, and he says, I've measured up. I'm enough. Look at what I have accomplished. And God comes and says, everything you have, I'm paraphrasing, but everything you have has been given by me. I'm the one who's control over it all. You don't measure up yourself. And then there's the scene where he turns into a wild beast and God humbles him and helps him see that he doesn't measure up on his own. Then we're going to see this next scene in chapter 5, his son or grandson, Belshazzar. He's kind of faced with a similar deal where he's kind of inherited the king. You know, he's kind of like the rich kid, but his daddy or granddaddy earned all the money and he's just inherited it all. And he feels this sense to like prove that it's like, hey, I measure and matter too. And yeah, I didn't do anything great, but I'm the man. And he has this desire to prove himself. And so what he does is he actually takes out the treasure from the kingdom of Israel and he starts to eat and drink of it. And he doesn't do it just to he does it in order to say to God, look what I can do. I'm master over it all. And that night, there's the handwriting on the wall. And as it's on there, one of the things it says is, you have been measured. You have been weighed. And you have been found wanting. And his soul is taken from him. His life is taken from him that very night. So there was the first man who thought, King Nebuchadnezzar, I measure up. I can do it on my own. Look at all I've done. And there's a second one that was kind of almost like I've got to prove myself. Forget God. I'm the man. Again, also. Both received a type of humbling. And one of the things I've noticed is I scramble and I run and I try to prove my self-worth. I try to prove that I matter and that I have value. And I'm forgetting the gospel, which the gospel says that I don't measure up. I am not able or worth it, right? But Jesus is the one who has paid for all the brokenness and the ways in which I don't measure up, and he's added to me his righteousness, to where when God looks at me, he doesn't see my value and whether I'm adding up. He sees Jesus' value. And so I measure and I matter and I add value or all the things. I'm enough because God sees Jesus and not me. And when I'm able to remember that, and when I'm able to walk and live in that, I find myself living in a much better place. Because when I'm scrambling to measure up and add value on my own, I find myself putting down coworkers, right? Maybe taking the credit instead of giving it to them because I want to make sure that they don't look as good as me because I want to add value. Or I find myself fighting in my marriage and needing to win the argument because I have to win, because I have to be right, because I have to matter. So just a challenge to you as you go out through your days, even as I'm going throughout my days, are we seeing whether or not we measure up, and are we finding that value as we look outward or inward at ourselves? In which case, I think that is going to go sideways and hurt those around us. And we're lying and deceiving ourselves. Or am I finding that value by looking up and looking at what God says about me? And one last thing pointing to the text is Nebuchadnezzar was looking out and saying, look at all I have done. And at the end of the story, after he's been turned into a wild beast, and then he's back to a man again, he looks up to heaven and he sees what God says. So I think when we look to God to find our value and we find that we measure up and find that we have our worth, that is where we need to be. So my question to you, do you measure up? And are you looking for your measurement in the right places? Amen.